holy new intro. I mean, that to me, when I put that together earlier in the week, JB, it really first went beyond what I thought it was going to look like. And second, the memories from last season, it was just really great to see all those different photos coming through and everything on that. And a couple from before last season, Eric Wren photo and whatnot. But that was a lot of fun. A lot of fun last season. How do we top it? How do we top it in season 11 here?
I think we're going to have to do something crazy, like some new ideas, maybe some new content, new on-location type of events, something like that maybe?
That's possible. You know, JB, one thing we should do, there may be some new folks watching us here. What the heck is In the Huddle? We are essentially a show that's been around for, this is basically 10 years now. The 10-year anniversary will be in October officially, but this is season 11. And Eric Wren and I had started this back in 2008 as an audio show. We did that for 9 seasons. JB came along in season 3, I want to say more officially, as a permanent co-host.
Yep.
And so
I think season 2 maybe. I kind of became an unofficial co-host in season 2 because we kept bugging you guys. And then finally Eric decided to retire from broadcasting, and so the promotion opportunity occurred, and so we've been running with it ever since.
Well, we decided to go from just a Liberty League show during those first 9 seasons to a broader East Region show because we said, hey, you know, those 7 teams at that time in the Liberty League are great and all, but we got to do something else here. We got to broaden out because our brand needs to expand. And honestly, we want to take a little risk here, go to video, justify the video. And so we still love the Liberty League, and you'll see that throughout this show probably in a lot of different ways. But we are an East Region show and even go beyond that. With certain topics. We covered the Luke Porman story in the offseason, as folks know, and there'll be a whole lot more throughout the season. I'm going to be attending Albright, hosting UMHB as kind of a crossover game on September 8th. But before we get to September 8th, JB, we have September 1st to talk about, and actually August 31st and August 30th, because we have teams starting on Thursday night and some good football at that. So let's sort of lay down where we're going with this show, this particular show, the preseason show. And that is, first, we want to kind of go over a couple things from the off-season and the preseason. And then we're going to jump into, as you can see below us now, we've moved that down to, we want our faces bigger because we thought you got to see more of us. So we've expanded our windows.
Our heads weren't big enough already, right?
Yeah. There went our ratings right there when I made that decision. But nonetheless, we are going to go to a top 12 that we did for the first time ever this season. 4 voters, but 4 very informed voters at that. Put this together, and we assembled it, and some real surprises, as we hinted at on Twitter earlier in the weekend. But look, JB, since our show in the off-season, one thing that obviously we have to both talk about is the passing of Mike Drass at Wesley. I hate to start on a downer, but at the same time, we want to celebrate his life. You may notice that in the flip cards of photos, slideshow, whatever you want to call it, in our intro, we did not put a photo of him in. Somewhat intentional, I respect, but we do want to let everybody know that this season of In the Huddle is dedicated to the memory of Mike Drass, head coach of Wesley. He passed very unexpectedly this summer, and a guy that we knew, but it took me going to Montclair on a whim, because Montclair should never have been in the game with Wesley, really, when you think about it last season, but Wesley was letting opponents stick around for way too long. And I put my money where my mouth was and went down there, and Drass saw me come downstairs. You never know, coaches really remember you or know you. And he saw me on the field area. He's like,
oh, he remembered what you said.
Oh, yeah. He was ready to pick on me about the whole thing, but basically I was wrong but right at the same time in his mind. But it was playful. We saw the press conference where he brought up my name in the show and everything else, and he was just a larger-than-life figure in a lot of different ways. I said this in the little spiel I gave as we replayed his interview during the summer, but he was somebody that loved his players, loved this game of Division III college football. Joe Callahan and Matt Gono and whatnot in terms of players that have tried to go to the next level or who have. He's always been their biggest cheerleader along the way. He's something special. What are your thoughts before we move on to, let's say, the 2018 season? And like I said, we will have a continuing retrospective of him throughout this season. You cannot forget Coach Drass, especially when you talk about Wesley. He is Wesley football, as I say.
Yeah, and I think whether or not you like the Wesley Wolverines, whether because they're a rival or they're a team that beats your team every season, you have to just respect the type of program that Coach Drass has built, which is pretty rare for the East region. We haven't really had a whole lot of success competing against the powerhouses from Ohio and Wisconsin and now Texas. We're starting to close the gap a little bit, but Coach Drass is one of the first people out there. He saw the model that was working at Rowan in the 1990s, and sort of took that and ran with it and really built Wesley into a perennial powerhouse, a team that was making the playoffs every year, making runs, and bringing some great players into their program. So he will definitely be missed. I know that Coach Knapp and others will continue to carry the flag and try to keep Wesley in the national conversation. And with some of the returning players they have, like former guests of ours like E.J. Lee and others, they'll definitely be in the thick of it once again in 2018.
Yeah, we'll talk a lot more about them. I just want to say, again, condolences to the Wesley community. This one does not go away quickly in any stretch of the imagination. He had a little chat session with Coach just before his passing. He helped us get Joe Callahan on the show when we did our off-season show and roundup to talk about Matt Gono, and he's just somebody that every time I would message him, it would be an instant response. He ate, he breathed, drank football. It really was that way. It's tough to talk about him and tough to talk about the season without him around. And so, when I think about going to a Wesley game, it's going to be great to see Coach Knapp, who's a great familiar face and somebody I truly love as a coach. He's always been outgoing with us and D3Football.com and on In the Huddle. But this one hurts, and it will hurt for a while. And it'll be interesting to see how Wesley bounces back. We will have a Wesley guest coming up in a little bit, not to spoil things here, but we will talk more about Coach Drass with them as well. Kind of our Miller Time segment, I guess we're calling it. We'll talk more about
we do have a Miller Time.
But again, Coach Drass is a definite story on our minds. But now let's talk about the preseason. You did a lot of writing for D3Football.com's Kickoff episode, or whatever you want to call it, publication.
I kind of view it as like an online magazine. It's sort of like the Street and Smiths, for D3. 250 teams is a pretty high bar to try to hit. And, between Pat and Keith and others running as editors and myself and about 20 other guys that were out there sort of beating around the bushes and talking to coaches, I did have a chance to focus on our old stomping grounds, the Liberty League. I got to talk to folks in the NUMAC who, we covered a lot last season, given Springfield's undefeated season, given how a few other teams from that conference have performed, and they had ties to the league we used to cover. So it was a great opportunity. I even got the chance to speak to a couple of coaches from the CCC, including Jason LeBeau from Western New England, who has got a big game against Springfield on Friday night. And so the best part about doing this is really getting to know the people, not just the players, but the coaches who've been around for a long time. And we've been around for so long, Frank. I mean, I think this is officially my 27th season of being a D3 football fan, if you include back my playing days in the early 90s and just regular fandom since then, because I was such a bad player. I didn't last very long. But So, it's been neat to see a lot of these head coaches now were guys that, played when we were either just out of college or, had been coordinators, and now they're taking over. Coach Bubno over at MIT. You have lots of different, old familiar faces out there that are now, taking the reins of these programs. So, there's some of these gray hairs in here, Frank. It's starting to show, but at least we know
once a week.
Kind of what we're talking about. And hopefully we can make this, this preseason and the regular season enjoyable. So, like our Facebook page, follow us at D3FB Huddle on Twitter, and we'll try to keep you up to date on everything that's been going on.
Enough about us, enough about, all of our self-promotion here, although we've got more self-promotion to come up as the day goes on.
Yeah.
But you brought up the Liberty League, and a team that will not appear in the top 12, I will tell you right now, is Union. And that is a team that we are interested to watch this season based on a few things. First, their 7-4, I think it was, season last year, with kind of a losing streak to end the season against RPI, and then the New York Bowl game against Cortland at that point. It's kind of that helter-skelter type scenario where they started so hot and then kind of tailed off. And the question becomes, against an Ithaca team, an RPI team, they had losses, and those are two of the teams that are teams to watch in the Liberty League. Can they bounce back and, turn the tables on teams like those, and also keep it up against Hobart like they did last year? And there's a team in the Empire 8 as well that we are very interested in seeing, because they had a season that I would call disappointing last year, surprisingly so. It kind of the flip side of what Union's season looked like. They were 3-7, Utica. Right down the street from each other when you think about it. They don't play each other in the regular season anymore. But the thing I was interested in here was they scrimmaged on Friday, and we don't get great amounts of information on scrimmages for a good reason. Obviously, they're changing in first team, second team, and third team players throughout the games, and they're not really games per se. They're just trying to mock it. But you get to see what the other team looks like at least, and learn a little bit about yourself, about are you ready? Are you conditioned? Are you set for this scenario? I know you were talking, as I was, to our friend Ray Biggs, who is the voice of Utica football. And, Biggs fed us information that Utica looked pretty darn good on Friday.
Yeah, well, Coach Fagiano has been building that program up for a while now, and they do have some very talented athletes, including one young man that we'll be talking to in just a little bit. But in the Empire 8, it's kind of a gauntlet. There are some clear early preseason favorites based on, I think, mostly last season. Every year is a new year, and there's always a team that somehow kind of pops up and rattles the cages of the usual suspects, and it looks like it could be this Pioneer team. They have the right combination of a strong offense and some good players on defense to do that. So it'll be interesting to see who are some of these up and comers that might challenge sort of the establishment, which is pretty common in D3 football. There are programs that keep it at a pretty high level year in and year out. Like the Wesleys of the world, in the last 15 years or so, Hobart, and for instance. So there's always someone who wants to break into that club, and Utica is definitely one of those kinds of teams.
The Utica Club, is that where you're going with that? Hey, now. Let's break this down a little bit further. We actually took participants in that scrimmage from each side and asked them about their seasons, and also asked them to play a little analyst for us about what they saw on Friday night from the other team, because they won't face off against each other unless it goes to playoffs and they meet up for some reason. For both of them, you got to hope. So let's see what it all leads to ultimately. But first, Jack Reilly from Union College, senior linebacker. Had a great time talking to him yesterday on the campus of Union College. And, let's let the interview speak for itself with Jack. Frank Rossi here on the campus of Union College with beautiful Knott Memorial behind me. I'm not partial or anything, folks, but Jack Reilly is here. And Jack, you're a helmsman right now for the defense for Union, and last season was a great season for Union in terms of wins and losses, but obviously tailed off toward the end. Coming into this season, How do you look at last season as a motivator for this year?
Yeah, so the end of the season, obviously we weren't happy with the results. This year coming in, we kind of, in the offseason, had a chip on our shoulder to work even harder and try and prevent that from happening again. We really just want to take it one game at a time. Focus on our first opponent, and then once we get over that hump, then to the next week.
You guys had focused on Utica coming into last week. Friday there was a scrimmage, and we heard a little bit from our friend Ray Biggs about how it went. It looked like Utica had some talent after a kind of disappointing year last year. What did you specifically take away from that event for Union?
Yeah, well, Utica's a great program. They had a bunch of great players, and it was great to go out there and compete for the first time. We had a lot of great things on film, a lot of things we had to clean up on film, but that's the point of a scrimmage. Basically to clean up the things before the first real go at it this Saturday against Husson.
Husson was a team that last year you kept close throughout most of the game. The fourth quarter they finally sprinted out ahead. John Smith has graduated since, a phenomenal running back for them. They come to Schenectady this year as well, and it's kind of quiet on this campus right now, except for what's going on behind us there with some cleanup going on. But you guys are on trimester here, so you don't have these distraction of students around you. How is this prep going, and how much are you looking back at last year's game film to get ready for this?
It's great. Yeah, we'll always use the film from the year before. I think being on campus without classes, without other students also, it kind of eliminates all the distractions. Right now we're basically just eating, sleeping, and breathing football. So it's really great. Yeah, we look at the film from last year, try and make corrections, try and see what worked, what didn't, and just pretty much take it step by step.
What do you think we're going to see in that game? A run-centric Husson or a pass-centric Husson? Without Smith, do you think it affects them?
Yeah, well, they have an explosive offense, so I think they're going to do what they do. For us, really, we just like to focus on us. We're not going to change anything that we do on defense. I'm sure they're going to run what they run on offense. So really, we just got to take this week serious preparation and really get ready for a strong opponent.
Now I'm going to ask you to play a little analyst for me here, because you're not going to face them unless it comes up in the playoffs. So you've scrimmaged Utica. That's a team that really struggled last year. As I said, they look to bounce back in the Empire 8 and maybe surprise some teams. Do you think they have the capability to do that?
Absolutely. Competing with them on Friday, it was great competition. They have a lot of great athletes, a lot of great coaches. Their special teams had some great schemes as well. I think they'll have some success this year, absolutely.
So what do you think this year for Union? What defines it as, let's say, success or not a success? I know you said take it game by game, but
yep.
With how things ended last year, and kind of going back to the first question, but getting a little more specific here, what defines the success for this year for you?
Yeah, so we do want to take it game by game, but also we want to win every game, right? We really want to finish 9-0 on top of the Liberty League, and that's what we would see as successful. Last year, 7-3 during the regular season. We had a good season, but this year we're looking for a great one.
You know how we end every player interview, that is with shout-outs, so it's all yours. Shout-outs to any family, friends, teammates, fans, anybody that's out there that's watching.
Awesome. Yeah, shout out to my family, my mom, dad, and sister. Thank you for supporting me, and I love you guys.
We love you for watching, folks. Jack, good luck this weekend and throughout the season. Hope to have you back later on this season.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. And that was Jack Reilly, linebacker from Union College, talking about the scrimmage on Friday, the season last year, and what could be upcoming this year. A little light on specifics, but this is what happens in the preseason. And you and I have experienced this with the Kickoff publication questions, even the coaches, that they don't know what they really have in their bag of tricks quite yet, because it takes that first game to really get comfortable a lot of times.
Yeah, and especially when you have incoming, first year and sophomore players, you see some game film, for instance, on the freshmen, and you know what they might be potentially capable of, but then all of a sudden, if they're starting college classes or just playing against guys that are 3-4 years older than them for the first time, and just another level up, and it can be really challenging. So you really don't know what you have until you get into that week one game, and even then you're going to hear the same stuff. It's we're taking it 1 week at a time. The old Coach Ray 0-0 and 1 to go. The cliches are going to start coming out, but that's the right kind of mindset you have to have, because really, even though the football season the regular season is 11 weeks, most teams have either 9 or 10 games, you really do have to kind of compartmentalize everything in order to reach that ultimate goal of a playoff berth.
So now let's flip the script here, Utica, and go ahead and introduce who we brought on.
Yeah, this is an interesting student athlete in junior quarterback / wide receiver Peyton Miller. He has played multiple roles, and according to our friend Ray and others up there in Utica, this is a real talented athlete. A guy can kind of do it all. So he's also a team first type of player. He's kind of like the Ali Marpet. You put him wherever you need him, and he'll do it. So we had a really interesting conversation with Peyton about the Pioneers preseason, and here it is. Well, Peyton, as the graphic says below, we know you're a junior there for the Pioneers, but quarterback, wide receiver, both. Let's start off because I saw your stats from last year. You passed for almost 500 yards. You ran for almost 100. You had almost 200 yards in receptions. You had lots of touchdowns in different ways. So what position are you actually going to be playing this year? Do you know?
I think I'm going to play both. It's a funny situation. It's a unique situation that I'm in, and I enjoy playing both. And, last year, kind of started out, I didn't, we weren't doing so well, so they put me in a receiver, and I'd never played receiver before, and it turned out all right. But I think at some point you can expect me to play both. But
that's what you call a true athlete, honestly. What did you play in high school exactly? Did you play both or just one, or how did this work?
My dad was a high school coach, so I played running back until about 10th grade, and then I played quarterback sophomore through senior year.
Okay. So basically, you know the entire offense. Like back in did you play lineman at all? That's the only thing that we're missing, I think, at this point. Maybe tight end, but that's incredible that you were so versatile. What's that?
Played everything but the line.
Okay,
there
smart man. So Utica last season obviously had what I would call a disappointing win-loss record at the very least. I believe 3-7 was the final on it. A lot of folks, including Ray Biggs, the voice of your football team, had some high hopes and aspirations. Didn't pan out necessarily. Is 2018 kind of the let's make up for 2017, lack of wins, or how are you viewing the season, especially with last year kind of in the rearview mirror now?
Well, it's funny because we typically always have up and down years. 1 year we'll go 6-4 or 7-3, and then next year, it's 3-7 or 4-6 or whatever. So I think every season's a whole different year. So I'm not looking at it as last year. I'm looking at it more like just it's a whole different time to shine. We got new player, or we got the same players pretty much, but different attitude. And I think we're gonna do a lot better than last year.
There you go.
What are some of the messages that Coach Fagiano and his staff have been kind of instilling throughout the preseason? And have there been any particular kind of camp competitions that have really stood out to you?
I would say just in general, like the little things, all the big time coaches, they keep saying it, take care of the little things, it's discipline and as cliche as those things are, even Urban Meyer and Dabo Sweeney, they say, take care of the little things and then the rest will fix itself. So I think that's what he's really emphasized. And along with that, Coach Fagiano does a great job at, building team unity and team chemistry and stuff like that. So he always has our guys hanging out with each other outside of football to build ourselves.
Definitely can tell he's a son of a coach. Looking at the coaching terms and everything else that he's using and sayings and everything, very good. I like it. So Friday you scrimmaged Union, and Biggs, as we call him, gave us a little bit of insight, saying that it was a pretty good showing. What's that?
I call him Biggsy.
Biggsy. Okay.
Biggsy. Yes, that's right.
Well, we may have to steal that from you. I hope you don't call for any royalties for that. But Biggsy told us that you'd got a good showing. That, look, score-wise, it would have probably been decidedly Utica, but it's a scrimmage. You just don't know because ones versus twos and all that stuff that goes on in scrimmages. So let's first ask you about your team. What did you learn about yourself in that scrimmage as a team? Things that are really good and things that probably need a little bit of fixing between now and the St. Lawrence game on Friday.
What I learned about our team is that we can be really dangerous. And we have a ton of weapons, and we have a lot of guys that are committed to this team. And the scary thing is, we did very well, but we didn't finish stuff. We left a lot of points on the board, and there's a lot of times we didn't score when we should have scored. And that's what I think that given the outcome that it wasn't very close. I know it's a scrimmage, but we left a lot of points on the field. We have
do that during real games, that's for sure. Keep going.
Well, that's just a little bit of a sample of how good we can potentially be.
And like I said, if Big Z was saying what he was saying, and it's true, you could put up 50, 60 points if you finish things, it sounds like. But let's flip to the other side. And I talked to Jack Reilly yesterday, the linebacker for Union, and asked him to play analyst. I'm going to ask you to play analyst now a little bit on the other team, because you won't see Union in the regular season at least. Maybe you both are blessed to make the playoffs at the end of the day and meet there. But for now, we'll assume you're not meeting this season. So give us kind of the company's secrets of what you saw as an analyst of Union College, especially their defense. What do you think of that squad, and what's their real strength right now as they head into their season?
There wasn't really a scouting report on them because it's scrimmage and we're focused on St. Lawrence. They have some players, as every college football team has some players. I know they had an all Liberty League or whatever defensive end that's going to hold it down for them. And I think they're a young team. I'm not really sure. I don't really know a whole lot about Union, to be honest with you. Just kind of went out there and played. But
you saw some studs and some novices, just the same, basically out there.
Yeah. Every team's got a collection of dudes, and they definitely, every team's got a collection of dudes. So I think they'll do fine.
Well, your collection of dudes, the Pioneers, took care of St. Lawrence, and it was kind of a low-scoring game. And your defense was actually got the first touchdown of the 2017 season, and then you had a couple of long touchdown runs, and the Saints didn't really do much until the game was pretty much in your favor. This season, you guys are going to make the drive up to Canton. You're playing on one of the last few remaining all-grass fields, assuming they didn't switch it over this offseason, which I don't think they did, but that's probably going to happen eventually. It seems like no one wants to play on grass anymore. But I don't know, Peyton, as far as what you're starting to see on film, what is your take on the Saints? They were a young team this year. I know from talking to their coach, Dan Puckhaber, they're going to be a young team again this season. But like you said, every team's got some dudes. So what are your thoughts on the Saints so far?
We don't have a whole lot of film on them, but we have our film from last year. Because it's the first game, and the first game's kind of a guessing game. And I don't, they don't really return a whole lot, and I think that we return a whole lot. So our experience and age should definitely play a huge factor. But, it's at their place. It's a long drive. It's on a grass field. We don't really play on grass, and it's going to be a different atmosphere. And, it's just a game. It's us versus them, and that's all that matters.
Okay, I'm going to dare to ask this of the son of a coach here. For you, personally, Peyton Miller, what would success be defined by this season when we're done with it? And, looking in the rear view to 2018 after the season's done, what's going to be the benchmark for you of whether this was a successful season or not for Utica?
For Utica? I would say, the ultimate goal is to compete for an Empire 8 championship. And, last year, we lost a lot of close games. We lost by a touchdown in over 5 games. So
that's true.
And I think that our outlook on this year and our team is a lot better than last year. I mean, if we can score a couple extra times or whatever it is to get that extra touchdown and beat the 4 or 5 teams we lost to by 6 or 7 points, then I would say, but yeah, definitely to compete for an Empire 8 championship.
JB, are you feeling like I am that Peyton is going to be a coach later on himself? I just get this feeling.
Definitely a very strong possibility.
Just the presence, the way he chooses his words, the way he says it. It's just, you're a coach material, my friend. But first things first, you finish your college career strong over the next couple of years. I have a feeling I know one of the shout-outs coming up here, but we give our player guests the opportunity for shout-outs to any family, friends, fans, teammates, whomever might be watching. So, Peyton Miller, the floor is yours for shout-outs.
Oh, I get to shout-out people?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I would definitely like to shout-out my mom holding the fort down and back in the 607 because the whole family's out of the house now. Sisters in college, brothers in the military, I'm in college. Kind of probably just, sitting at home by herself. But definitely like to shout out to my mom and my grandparents. And Dudley and Linda French. And I like to shout out to Michael Giralmo, who is a really good friend of mine that got a great job down in Florida. And, he's working hard and making money, and I stay in touch with him, and we're good friends. So I'd like to shout out to those people.
Well, make sure that they add us, follow us on Facebook and Twitter so they see you and see any coverage we give to Utica this season, because you're one of the teams we are watching this year for sure, both you and Union. So that's why the scrimmage was enticing for us to kind of take a look back at a little bit here. And we'll follow both your teams throughout the season and maybe have you back on. You can break down some more games for us along the way. Put on the coach hat a little bit for us at some point.
Awesome. Call me whenever. I like it.
Thank you, sir. That was Peyton Miller of Utica, wide receiver / quarterback, and great to have him on. And again, we didn't learn necessarily a lot about each team, Union and Utica, from the analysis. I think they have a lot of mutual respect for each other, that's for sure. And the score that might have developed on Friday doesn't tell the story of what these seasons will probably look like. But Utica at 3-7 last season, looking to bounce back. Obviously, Union at 7-4 last season, looking to take the early season momentum they had, repeat it, and then carry it through to the end this time around. There are going to be two teams we're going to watch. We wanted to also, talk to two schools that we might not get to as much normally throughout the year, and glad we were able to do so. And thanks to the respective schools for helping to set those interviews up. So there's that. Now, a lot of people are sick of polls and sick of all these things. So I like to think of what we're about to do as more of a way too early East Region poll. What they do at the end of the season to, announce the playoff bracketing and whatnot, and to sort of give us, hints as to where they may bracket ultimately if they
regional ranking
be picked. Yeah. Regional rankings. Way too early East Regional rankings because, hey, I think the people that we had doing this are of that caliber. And there it is, the big board of this way too early East Regional rankings, and we're calling it in the D3FB Huddle 2018 preseason top 12. It doesn't flow from the tongue nearly as well, but it is what it is. And our
it's sort of like a baker's dozen, Frank. And
we're going to reveal right off here the first grouping, and this is the way we're going to do it. We're going to do it by conference. After we get to a team in the listing, we'll list all the teams from that conference inside this. And the Empire 8 is going to be the first one because Brockport is number 1. No surprise there. It was unanimous. 4 first-place votes from our panel of experts, including Pat Coleman and Matt Noonan. The question mark for Brockport for me is offensive line. And I've heard, I was talking to Coach Potter a little bit, that they're definitely green in terms of youth on the line, but they're starting to meld together, he said. You and I are going to get a chance to see it firsthand. I'll talk about that in 1 second, though, a little bit more. But Joe Germanario, the magician on offense, Jake O'Connell is back as a defender this year. He has a year of eligibility left. So the defense has got a good helmsman back there. The offense relies on Joe to be able to be magician. And the offensive line is the key to that. Agree or disagree?
I agree, but I also think Joe is helped by the fact that with a running back like Morrison, there's plenty of threats. Plus the three receivers, Ortiz, Hubbard. I mean, there's just a lot of weapons on this offense, and I agree with you. The offensive line is a question mark. Senior co-captain Caleb Furless is moving from left guard, where he played the last 3 seasons, over to right tackle. So they're shifting some things around. It'll be interesting to see how long it takes that group to sort of gel and become that elite unit that really paved the way, literally and figuratively, for them to make it all the way to Texas and the Final Four, which an East Region team hadn't done since I think St. John Fisher did it in 2006. So almost over a decade. And so it all starts up front, Frank. And the Golden Eagles are bolstered by the fact that their defense returns 8 or 9 starters, depending on how you count them, including Matt Szymanski, as well as Austin Dean, who is a preseason All-American at nose guard. So they're loaded on defense, and just the question will be, can the offensive line pull things together enough to allow Joe to do that magic, as you said, back there, which earned him a first-team preseason All-American honor from D3Football.com. Effectively, they're saying he's the best quarterback coming into 2018.
With apologies or none to D'Angelo Fulford and Luke Portman, apparently, and many others out there.
Yeah, it's all figured in.
It's verified error, no doubt, when you get to that point. Let's look underneath it, because the team that probably has the best chance to, at least in the conference, handle Brockport is Alfred, and they're at number 5. So they get some respect in this poll, no doubt. They were 8-3 last season. Obviously, the loss to Brockport weighs a little bit on them until they can prove they can beat them. But they almost did beat them last year, partially by way of knocking Joe Germanero out of the game. But both quarterbacks came out of that game eventually, as we were doing our D3 Blitzer show and watched that firsthand live. Alfred, a lot of respect, and a good number of returners, if I remember correctly, from when I was voting in the D3Football.com Top 25 poll. But I don't know. This is going to be a tough season to judge them on. They've got a decent non-conference schedule from what I'm remembering here. I'm going to call it up just so I have it. Yeah,
their opener is a pretty easy one against Thiel. I mean, that's not going to be a real challenge for them. But the rest of their schedule, Utica, Portland, and then you're right into the thick of the Empire 8 there. They finish up at Rochester, which is a good game, I think, for both teams to kind of wrap up the season with. I mean, the main question is who replaces Malike Fuentes, their star running back. They only have 6 offensive starters coming back. The defense is a little more intact with 8. They're going to need to find someone to help them out in the kicking game too. So there are a few holes there, but they're a strong enough program. Coach Rankel we spoke to last season, they're I'm sure reloading more so than rebuilding there. So I see another potential 8, maybe 9 win season for them, depending on how it goes early on.
They lived without Fuentes for a part of last season, if I remember correctly, because of injury.
They did, yes.
So it's not like he was an absolute need for them. It's great to have him, no doubt. He was a talented player. But they are used to adjusting in that respect. So Alfred and Brockport we're focusing on. I want to go back up to Brockport for a second here. And we want to talk about the fact that on Saturday, September 1st, we are going to be at Brockport live, against our better judgment probably to do this, but we're going to do it. We're going to be live on the field level, and we're going to try to let people behind us and have a little bit of a game day type setting and do what we can. We'll do a pregame show starting at 12. We'll do some in-game updates on Facebook Live and hopefully get them linked over to Twitter as well. And we'll do a post-game show with some interviews with both the winning and the losing team to the degree we can get the losing team to come back out and talk to us about a game that will not determine, in terms of Brockport-Hobart, anything in conference standing, so it doesn't affect Pool A. So both teams are still very much alive after this game, win or loss. But at the same time, this is going to teach us a lot about each team. And Brockport, is on that winning streak, regular season winning streak right now after 10-0 last season. So there's a lot of pride for them here. But let's remember, this was the game last year that Joe Germinario came into our vernacular essentially as a superstar quarterback. And I mean, how many yards did they amass last year against Hobart? Was it like 600?
It was over 600 yards of total offense, which is interesting because when you look at the box score, I mean, it was a pretty close game for the most part, although from a score perspective, the stats definitely did lean heavily more so towards Brockport, because Brockport really just has these explosive playmakers. Justin Morrison had a 68-yard run. His final touchdown run with about 2 minutes left in the game to give them that 2-touchdown cushion was a 22-yard run. Even Joe, with the first touchdown of the game after both teams sort of struggled to do anything offensively, ran the ball in from 14 yards out. So not only can he throw the ball, which he did almost 360-something yards in that game, but he also can run it on you too if he gets in trouble. So this will be interesting to see because Brockport kind of comes in now as an established front runner in the East region. They're ranked number 6 in the D3Football.com top 25. Hobart, for the first time in a while, is viewed as kind of an underdog. They haven't won more than 7, 8, 9 games in the last couple of seasons. They've only won 7 games last year. So they've come down a little. They've come back to earth a little bit. Can they move back up? And ultimately, I think it'll be a test of this very young, inexperienced Hobart team to really see how they stack up against one of the proverbial Eastern powers.
Let's go back to this, put it into the big screen here for folks. And you've got Cortland and St. John Fisher rounding out Empire 8 teams that are ranked in our top 12 poll, or at least getting votes. Both teams that could sneak in and bite somebody not really ready for them, for sure. Cortland gets a slight edge here, but it's very close, I'll tell you. And we're not putting the numbers, obviously, because of the low number of point total. But at the same time, these are two teams that are getting a lot of respect overall. Do you think either of these teams will make noise this season in the Empire 8, and maybe even if they can't beat Brockport, be a playoff team through Pool C, which only has, I believe, 5 slots this season, Pool C?
Potentially. It'll be interesting to see because Cortland has to play a couple of Massachusetts state schools to start off before they get into their conference play. They have, I think, a good chance to win upward of 8 or more games potentially. It's all going to come down, though, if you look at their schedule, it's very backfilled. They basically finished the season with Fisher, Brockport, and Utica. So it's possible they could be 7-0 or 8-0 going into the final weeks of the season, and definitely be getting consideration for not only a Pool C but possibly a Pool A. I mean, that the November 3rd game at Brockport could be between two 9-0 teams. I'm sorry, 8-0 teams going into that one for a chance to go 9-0 and really have that sort of conference championship feel.
You bring up a very good point, actually. One thing I neglected to talk about, that slot was the Alfred Brockport slot last year, the Week 10, Game 9 slot. Alfred Brockport moves to October 13th this year, so we're going to have a determination on that game mid-season instead of late season. And like you're saying, an equally possibly adept opponent, especially at that time of the season, in Cortland, will be facing off against Brockport. That'll be interesting to watch, and it is at Brockport, the Cortland game, so a little home cooking at 2 o'clock that day. Maybe we'll do another Blitzer show, who knows, that weekend, and see.
That went pretty good the first time, sort of, after a couple hiccups.
Hey, if it's not a hiccup and a problem, it's not in the huddle. That's all I can tell you.
That's
so
right.
There's the Empire 8, 4 teams. I believe that is the most for any conference in the top 12, plus others receiving votes. And let's go to the next conference that's showing. The team that's number 2 will drop the rest of the conference down. Any guesses here what conference might be representing in the number 2 slot, etc.?
Well, in Kickoff, the top-rated Eastern Conference wasn't the Empire 8 for the first time in a while. It was actually the New Jersey Athletic Conference, or the NJAC, as we like to call it. And two of the top teams in the nation, Frostburg and Wesley, kind of going neck and neck. It's been going the Wolverines' way these last few years, and we only get one more year of the Bobcats and Coach Fitzy, who we enjoyed meeting last season. But Frostburg State brings back a team that went into the quarterfinals. They eventually lost to Luke Porman and the Mountain Union Raiders, but they bring back a lot on that team and are, depending on how you look at it, they're either the preseason one or Wesley's the preseason one. I think the NJAC coaches picked Wesley. I think D3Football.com is picking Frostburg. So it's going to come down to the wire for both of those two top teams. And then rounding it out with Salisbury, I mean, they lost in their season finale in an ECAC bowl game to Utica. It was one of the craziest games that I watched in the postseason. Which was a lot of fun, the Scotty Whitelaw Bowl. That team is always in the thick of it. They pushed Wesley to the limit, and they've always been long-term rivals with Frostburg down there in Maryland. So you gotta factor in that they'll be sort of like Cortland or Alfred in the Empire 8. They'll be looking to upturn the apple cart or whatever the saying is, and make some noise of their own.
One thing as I bring the big board up here is that Frostburg and Wesley, if one of us had switched our vote in 2 versus 3, it would have been a tie. So it was that razor thin. Frostburg basically 2, Wesley at 3. This is going to be an incredibly interesting matchup to me. I want to see what week it is in. I originally looked at this and now have forgotten, which is too many teams, too many games going on in my head this week.
Well, with Frostburg, actually, their season finale is against Salisbury. So once again, it's kind of backloaded. The Frostburg will play Wesley on October 6th. So
yes, they will.
Just like with like you said, with Alfred and Brockport, it's kind of been moved up. And there's actually that's happening with a few conferences, including the Liberty League, which I think we're going to cover pretty soon. But yeah, you got keep your eyes on that final end of the year 11-10 game with Salisbury. Salisbury's got a tough go. They got to play Albright on Friday night. It's a pretty solid out of conference game, and then they start off against a bunch of teams in the NJAC that they've traditionally beaten. So once again, they could be undefeated coming down the stretch. They have an interesting game at the end of October against Rowan, who is opening up against Widener from the MAC, which is a team I think we need to keep an eye on based on my conversations with Coach Kelly there in Pennsylvania. So lots of interesting stuff going on in another conference with about a 3 or 4 headed monster type of race going on.
Well, let's stop here. Wesley is the team that we want to talk a little bit more about. We talked about Coach Trask at the top of the show, and we wanted to talk to a player to see how life is going in terms of post-Coach Trask and how the team's responding to it, especially in the preseason now that they're back. So without any hesitation, go ahead and do the intro, sir.
All right. So coming to us from Dover, Delaware, senior offensive lineman Devin Miller from Wesley College.
Devin, we kind of want to obviously ask about the Coach Trask passing, horrible news this summer. Where were you when you found out about it? What was your initial reaction, and how is the team coping with the loss at this point?
I was actually at home about to head up because we were supposed to start our summer lifting that day. And one of my teammates had texted me the news, and I was just in utter disbelief. I called him immediately, my teammate, and I said, "What happened? What's going on? Like, this can't be real." I couldn't believe it at all. And as for the team, they held a service that night, and just to see the outcome that could be put together so quickly, it was just astonishing. And we've all been, since camp started, we've all been banding together and, trying to support each other and move on, because we know that that's what Coach Draft would want. He wouldn't want us to dwell on it too long. It's a big hit to us, but he would want us to keep this Wesley train rolling.
Well said. Well said. JB?
Well, Devin, looking back, so what I guess from last season, you guys ran the table in the end, Jack. You had a great season, but the start was a little bit rocky. I believe you guys lost your starting quarterback in the first game against Del Val. Their defense scored off of a couple of turnovers. As you prepare for this big Friday night game, which we understand you're going to have a pretty large crowd of fans there for you, what's sort of the mindset, and what was kind of the thought process in the preseason to kind of get the offense running?
In the preseason, of course, we've been focused on getting our young guys right, getting them to learn the offense. But at the same time, we've been preparing for Del Val because that's our first obstacle to overcome. We've lost to them the past 2 years, and we got to make this. We got to come out strong on this third one. So we've just been really preparing for them, watching a lot of film, scheming based on what they do. And Friday night is going to be a special one, most definitely.
It's definitely one I wish I could attend. There's so many prime games this first weekend, which, again, kudos to the teams for taking on these non-conference schedules the way they do, especially Wesley and Del Val. For you personally, what's your history at offensive line? Have you been switching around? How long have you been at the center position? And what do you see as your job, especially as a captain, in protecting the quarterback, etc.? You're no slouch in terms of your height at 6'4", and what are you, 255 at least last year? You probably another few pounds if I had to guess in camp right now. But I mean, what's your history? What's your role right now, do you think, as center?
Well, I actually got recruited as a center coming out of high school, and after my freshman year, I got moved to right tackle, and then that's what I started as last year. But coming into camp, the coaches believed that I could do a better job at center, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to benefit the team. And my role as captain and center, I'm just trying to do everything I can to make sure the young guys are right, make sure they're learning their things. And, I believe that the center is the quarterback of the offensive line. We got to be able to point out any blitzes, make any play call changes to certain things like that. So I just have to be a leader as much as I can.
And as much things have changed there in Dover, Devin, I imagine that one of the comforting aspects is, with the elevation of Coach Knapp to taking over the program, that there is some long time consistency along with Coach Az and other coaches that have been with Coach Strass for all this time and building that program to where it is. What's it been like in your first camp, being led by Coach Knapp and the new quote unquote new staff there in Dover?
It's definitely been a big difference with, not having Coach Strass's presence, but it has made things a lot easier having faces that we're so comfortable with. I've been with these coaches my whole career, so, that's really helped. But, the energy is just kind of different. Us older players kind of have to instill the things that Coach Strass drilled into us. We kind of try to instill those into the younger guys, but, we can't do Coach Strass justice.
The older players, when you're talking guys in their 40s, using the word older players just doesn't work right for me for some reason. We're the older players, I hate to tell you.
Way older, yeah.
Last season, obviously, the playoffs didn't go to the way the team wanted. Brockport is a special team. Coach Strass thought Joe Germinario was a special player and had written as such to Pat Coleman at D3Football.com. But even the beginning of the playoffs didn't necessarily go swimmingly. RPI was a struggle for Wesley. What is this team's, let's say, goal to, let's say, call a success of a season? I ask this often in the preseason, and we hear a lot of we take it one game at a time thing, but there's got to be some kind of benchmark for this team in terms of success or not a success when you look back at the season when it's done. What do you think it is right now?
Obviously, as for every single team that's playing, our goal is to win the Stag Bowl. But, I believe that personally for Wesley, one of our biggest things to try to accomplish is to, make Coach Strass proud. And obviously, we're not planning to go 5-5 or anything. We're planning to do much better than that. We make it to the playoffs every single year. So, of course, that's got to be a consistent thing for us. We have to keep that up. So, regardless of things that have happened in the past, we're going to strive to make it to that Stag Bowl and win it all.
Coach Knapp is known as one of the nice guys of Division III football, but if you guys go 5-5, let me tell you, I know the fire in the belly will come out, and it will not be a comfortable existence. No.
Yes, sir.
JB?
Well, Devin, I guess it's interesting with you mentioned earlier, not being able to beat Del Val. According to the polls, you guys are ranked higher than them. You're in effect the favorites for this game to a certain extent. But talking about the playoffs, you guys are both playoff teams, both conference champions. What do you think about having your first game basically almost be like a de facto, and this is almost like a playoff game in and of itself, right?
Oh, yes, sir. This is definitely going to be big for us. We were really hoping to see them in the playoffs again last season. So, we really have to come back strong from the past couple times that we've played them. We can't take them lightly. Like rankings, they're really not big to us. We just do what we have to do, play our game, and try to come out on top.
Del Val's calling. They said that they plan on winning this game. So,
good save, Frank.
Hey, we may not be live, but we keep this stuff in, so it's okay. On that note, sir, if you're any kind of viewer of our show, you know that our player guests get the last word insofar as shout-outs. Friends, family, fans, teammates, whoever may be watching, we give you the floor to send the shout-outs. So, Devin Miller, senior center, make sure we got that right, at Wesley College. Shout-outs are all yours.
I'd just like to start by giving a shout-out to my family, who is my whole support system. They make it to every single game, starting with my mother, Sharon, my father, Alfonso, and one of my biggest fans, my aunt, Karen, and my cousin, Ralph, and then my grandparents. They're my everything. I play for them. And an even bigger shout out to my teammates, and the biggest shout out to Coach Drass. I want to make this last season special for you, and we miss you, big guy.
It's very true. Make sure Aunt Karen adds us so that she can see this. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter if she can, and the rest of the family. Love all the family shout-outs. I always say, as an Italian, it's near and dear to my heart, and the Coach Drass shout-out for sure. We share that we will miss him as well. Good luck this weekend. Obviously, we can't pick favorites because we cover all these teams, but we have a soft spot and want you to do the best you can, because that's what Coach Drass would want to see, win or lose. So good luck this weekend, Friday night specifically, against Del Val.
Thank you very much.
That was Devin Miller, senior captain from Wesley, and obviously, again, our condolences out to the Wesley family. And this is going to be one that obviously they're playing for Coach Drass in his memory. There is no doubt. We didn't even need to have that interview to know that fact. It's something that's going to be special to watch, sad, or almost bittersweet in a lot of ways. And we'll see how it plays out.
Well, all I can say, one of the few life lessons I've taken from football is it does sometimes help you, it definitely brings a brotherhood of, the teammates, the coaches, and all that. That's a connection that is about as similar to family as you can get. But there's also one of the side effects of football, and I don't mean this in a negative light, is short memory and focusing on the future. Once the game is over, it's done. You maybe go back and watch the tape and learn a few things. Maybe look at some areas that you can improve upon. But mostly, once a game is over, you move on. And I think that's the focus of the Wolverines. Not that they're forgetting Coach Drass. I mean, his name is on the field. They'll be playing for him, for a long time. But knowing the kind of guy Coach Drass was, I'm sure he would want his team to focus on the future and just have the best season they possibly can.
Here. I've said my statement earlier about him, and we don't want to belabor the show too much because we will have him on our mind all season. But it will be interesting to watch this team this year because of obviously some losses to graduation, especially. This is going to be one of the bigger question mark Wesley teams, even without what's playing in the storyline in the background, we would assume that they're going to be a very good Wesley team because they just reload. But we'll see what happens here. E.J. Lee, though, being back in the backfield is going to be very important to that team, the way he was running up and down the field toward the end of the season last year. So that is the end, Jack, in a nutshell. And so we have 7 teams up on this board at this point. And it's time to go to the number 4 team and look at the rest of their conference as well. And that team is Delaware Valley. Now, this is an interesting situation here because if you look at others receiving votes, Widener's down there. And when we took this poll originally a few weeks ago, we didn't necessarily have as much inside information about Widener at that point in time, I don't think. Del Val loses a lot of players. I think they only have 5 returning offensive starters coming in and not many more on defense. Widener is stacked with returners. So
like All-American
very well flip
returners.
We could very well flip this order by the end of the season. I think what's happened is that Del Val is one of those teams like Wesley, you assume they reload. Now, they face Wesley to, start their season again, if I remember correctly, at 7 o'clock.
That's right, on Friday night,
Friday night. So keep an eye out for that game. It's at Wesley. It's going to teach us a lot about both of these teams, just like a game we'll talk about later, Springfield, Western New England, 2 front runners in their respective conferences, and facing off right at the start with a lot of losses, though, in terms of players. So we're going to learn a lot about all 4 of those teams based on the matchups we got right up front on week 1. And, kudos to these teams for taking on these out-of-conference schedules in such a way. But Del Val, Widener, and then nothing else on the screen. Albright's got some incredible out-of-conference games to start their season against Salisbury and Mary Hardin Baylor. If they can survive those, just throw them at the top of this list. If they were to ever be able to start 2-0, Albright would be probably right underneath Brockport at that point in time, assuming Brockport starts 2-0 themselves. But we'll focus right now on Del Val and Widener. What's your thought right now after looking at how they fell in this poll?
Well, I think Del Val is getting a lot of credit for the years of success that they've had. They had a very strong season last year. They handled Widener in that game last season pretty easily. So I think voters, the preseason poll for the MAC came out and they were picked first. I think Stevenson was second, and then third was Widener. But in my interview with Coach Kelly for the Kickoff publication, I was blown away by the talent that they had on that Pride roster, including their senior defensive end Char, who's just sounds like a NFL beast, like you bench press 1 million pounds, and they've got 9 or so guys back on defense, and you look at Del Val's roster, and 5 offensive starters returning, only 2 on defense, and the Del Val defense really was a big reason for their wins against Wesley, for some of their their playoff domination, and really kept them head to head with Brockport. It came down to a final field goal, which you actually caught on film as the ball went over the goalpost down there in the national quarterfinal. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if the Pride makes a run and maybe even supplants Del Val. Right now, the interesting thing is that Widener has a tough opener against Rowan, who's always a solid program. And then, of course, as luck would have it, week 11 versus Del Val. So we may not even know who's going to win that MAC until the final week of the regular season in mid-November. So this is going to be an interesting race to watch. And maybe Stevenson or Albright is a team that comes in and makes a run at it. But right now, I think the Pride and the Aggies are really the top 2 teams in the conference.
The MAC generally thought of as the power conference in the East region, maybe not so much right now because of the Empire 8's dominance. The Empire 8's always up there with them, but there seems to be a clear separation right now in a lot of people's minds about where things are falling, and you can see it, I think, here with only 2 teams and one of them just barely making into the other receiving votes. Yeah,
well, the MAC didn't do themselves any favors with their postseason performance last year. Del Val accepted because they won 2 playoff games, but they beat New England teams which some national pundits may say doesn't tell you all that much. But yeah, the rest of the conference, including Widener, went over in the Centennial MAC Bowl games. I think one of the teams also played and lost in an ECAC Bowl game. So aside from Del Val, the MAC kind of had a pretty poor postseason. So I think nationally some folks might be down on the conference a little bit. But you still have a lot of talent there in Pennsylvania, and those schools are, just real solid, and it'll be once again probably a 2-3 team race down the stretch.
Let's go to the next one, and this is, I think, the biggest irony coming up here, and we'll go to the big board to show it. For those keeping track at home, probably thinking the next conference is the Liberty League, and if that's the case, we have a tie showing up here right off the bat, and there it is. RPI and Ithaca tied. It was that close to the point where the points matched, and Hobart at number 11. A little surprising to me there. I thought they might fall off this chart entirely, and it wasn't. I will bail you out right away on this. It was not you. You did not do this.
That's true. I mean, I'm definitely been known to be a homer of sorts, but yeah, I mean that's I think the biggest thing with Hobart is we don't really know what kind of team they're going to be.
Exactly.
There's no Sweeney to shed. There's no cardiac kids. There's a lot of turnover on the defense. We really don't know what we're going to get from this Hobart team that Coach DeWall has returned now and taken the reins from Coach Craig, who's retired, to run. It's certainly not probably the same Hobart that we saw in that 2011-14 run where they basically won almost all of their regular season games. They've been a little more injury and loss prone in the last 3 seasons. So, I mean, I think Coach DeWall has his hands full. He's definitely going to have to be creative in how he works in some of these younger players, because this is not a senior laden team, and it's kind of a big question mark. I mean, Hobart could be a 5-4 team. They could be a 9-0 or 8-1 team. Nobody knows, and so I think this spot in the poll is probably based on historical success, and I do believe you can call them a perennial Eastern powerhouse now based on their track record. But we don't really know what we're going to see until we actually get out to Brockport on Saturday and watch the game in person.
Couple things to think about here. You're talking about the Brockport game, Morrisville State after that for Hobart. Then it's basically reuniting the assistant coaches of Hobart history at Shenandoah and at Endicott is an interesting one. It's no longer assistant coach, as I see. I forget that DeWall is now over to Hobart. McGonigal is now the coach at Endicott. This plays out very interestingly. I forgot this game remained because of the old agreement, and they never replaced it after the coaching.
Probably the last one for a while, but
how come?
It'll be good. It'll be a good good contest for both. And yeah, I mean this Hobart defense is going to be really tested. I mean, they got Germanero in week 1. The quarterback from Shenandoah has been rated as a top preseason All-American by some other publications. He threw for a lot of yards, so. Like I said, we don't really know what we're going to get with this young Hobart team, but they're going to be tested early on.
Let's look at the number 6 tie, though, because these are the teams that are ranked higher than them. And names Marinopolis and Nabi come to mind right off the bat. The battle of 2 very good quarterbacks, and I think you have some insight as to some background with those guys.
Yeah, I mean, they basically grew up about 20 miles from each other in the suburbs of Albany. Wahid Nabi from Ithaca attended Shaker High School and was able to beat Marinopolis's Guilderland Red Fam, I guess is their nickname, or Red Tide. It's funny, George was lucky. He stayed in the same town basically and got to keep the same school colors. But George really made a name for himself when he actually beat the Bombers in the middle of last season and helped RPI back to the playoffs for the first time in over 10 seasons. And so it'll be interesting to see. This is one of those games, Frank, we talked about earlier, where they're facing off in the conference opener because the Liberty League has shrunken down so much. They only have 5 conference games. It'll be 6 next season when Buffalo State comes in as an associate member. But we'll kind of already see the Liberty League pecking order in that. I think it's week 6, where you have a guy playing Ithaca. And our alma maters, Union and Hobart, are going to go at it on the same weekend. So that'll be a real interesting conference opener for the Liberty League.
Yeah, I make the mistake on week 5 versus 6 because they're both taking the 9/29 Saturday off and on 10/6 playing each other. RPI Ithaca. It is at Ithaca. It looks like, yes, at 1 o'clock. That'll be one to watch. Maybe one I attend. We'll see what happens as the season plays out a little bit. The travel budget has been increased this year, or to manifold, as they say. Right. So this league with only 6 teams has 3 teams we're watching inside this poll. That's interesting in and of itself. Ithaca obviously has bred new life into this conference by joining last year, you know what? They got a little more attention in the D3Football.com conference survey numbers there, however they determined them. So Liberty League looking up overall. We'll see if the season delivers that, especially with all the out-of-conference games. They have a lot of teams.
One sort of final comment, sort of irony, is the fact that both RPI and Ithaca not only tied in our poll, but also tied in the Liberty League coaches poll.
I saw that.
So
I saw that.
It's sort of like it could go either way, and then you have teams like Hobart out there that may or it could be an interesting year, to say the least.
Let's go to number 8. We're going to go a little faster on what's remaining here, although not too fast on the next one. Number 8 is Springfield. WPI drops in there as well, tied with Cortland at number 12. It's the new MAC that we're looking at. And I think we should start right off the bat here with our interview because the change that's being created, I think, in the interview tie in together. The loss of Wilcox, the loss of Eglantine to graduation, and the questions, on defense, whether it's going to be a strong defense or not, or they always persist at Springfield. They have a generally very good defense, no doubt. But the special nature of Springfield is the triple option offense and who's executing it. And you need a good quarterback for the transitions, obviously, and you need a quality running back. Now, there's a player on their roster that could do both, but is going to remain as a running back with the experience he has, and that is
junior running back Hunter Belzo from the Springfield College Pride is just joining us in the huddle. All right, well, Hunter, there's been a lot of press on the Pride coming into this season. It looks like you guys you got the target on your backs for 2018, but I've seen a lot on social media. Can you kind of tell us how preseason camp has gone so far?
Preseason's going good. I feel like since I've been here, this is one of our best preseasons yet. All of our guys are on board. We're all on the same mission. Come back, go 10-0 again, make a run in the playoffs. Like, we know what we're capable of doing. Now it's time we just gotta execute.
Now, Hunter, part of the preseason, I spoke with your head coach Mike Sarasillo about spring camp, and I guess you got a couple of future Red Sox or Yankees, I guess, depending on what fan base the people up there in Springfield are, or probably Red Sox as in Western Mass, but so. See on the roster is playing halfback. You played a little quarterback, but what position are we going to see you in this season?
I'm gonna be playing halfback this season, but
all right.
I don't know what can happen. I've been taking some reps at QB, so we'll see.
So let's talk about some of the losses on offense that you guys are experiencing and how you parlay this into success for 2018. Obviously, Jake and Jordan are 2 really impressive football players that obviously don't come back here. Jordan, Ghilardi Trophy finalist, as we all know. What do we have to look forward to, and what did these guys do in terms of paving the way, along with you as an underclassman but with experience, to sort of make 2018 a successful season?
Losing Jordan, obviously, that's a big loss, but we got 4 fullbacks who could come in and make plays. So I feel like we have a good 4 fullback rotation that could come in and make plays. Wilcox, last year he helped pave the way for these younger guys that are going to be playing this year. And then losing Jake, we got Chad Shade. He could play a little bit of football.
Just a little bit of football. Just a little.
He was the starting quarterback there for a while when Jake was injured a couple seasons ago and won some ball games for him. So definitely can make some plays. And speaking of playmakers, Hunter, I think everyone always hears about Springfield. You guys are almost number 1 or 2 in the nation when it comes to rush yards per game. But the other side of it, and you have firsthand experience going up against these guys in camp, is that your defense is one of the best in the nation too. I think held opposing offenses to under 13 points per game, and had all the stats. Nick Giorgio, preseason All-American, and a couple different publications going into it. Do you think the Pride defense is going to have a little chip on their shoulder because everyone's always talking about the offense?
Yeah, of course. Our defense, practice, we've been going against them all camp. They're flying around, making plays, whatever. So our defense is going to come back maybe even better than last year.
That's a tall order right there, to say the least, because they did have some overall good games. What was the taste in the team's mouth, though, after the first round loss? Obviously, there were high aspirations in the playoffs. Has that really lent to the chip on the shoulder, possibly, to come out swinging here to better last year's result, at least playoff-wise?
Oh, absolutely. That playoff game was tough to everybody. We went 10-0. Whatever, but losing that playoff game, that was the real heartbreaker of the season. Like that 10-0 went away after we lost that first round of playoffs. So we're hungry to come back. We want to get in the playoffs. We want to advance. So,
well, it's a new season for you, Hunter. Clean slate. Everyone's 0-0. And now that you're a junior, you've been on both sides, a win and a loss in the pinch and saw rivalry game against Western New England. You guys lost to them your freshman year, and then you beat them and sort of set off that 10-0 run with a really good game against them. It's Friday night under the lights. I'm sure it's it's an exciting opportunity for the team to keep that saw in the trophy case there behind you. I don't know if it's up on Coach Sarasula's desk or something, but tell us what this rivalry game means to the team and how important it is to keep the saw in your side of town in Springfield.
Oh, this is a big game. Of course, everyone comes out. I think last year we played in front of 5,000 people. It's a big game, especially this year. It's going to be under the lights, but keeping the trophy. So when I was in my freshman year, I visited Western New England. And the coach goes, "Yeah, Springfield's not going to get this trophy back anytime soon." So when I made that decision to go to Springfield, I want to keep that trophy here as long as I'm here.
Scout them out for us a little bit, because obviously you've been beginning to look at game film as it's opponent number 1 here. Anthony Service graduates. I think he's going to help with the coaching, if I remember correctly from the offseason news.
That's right, yep.
New head coach, technically, with a late announcement there. But obviously a lot of talent coming back from last couple seasons for the underclassmen that have come on up here. What is that team going to be like? With Service out, is that going to be a game changer for them, do you think? How do you really approach this team?
No, looking at them defensively, they're returning about 9 starters. We're going to still come out there and do what we got to do. Last year, despite the return of their stars, we still put up 28 points on them in the third quarter. But with their loss to their quarterback, I'm sure it's a big loss for them, big playmaker for them. So we'll see what happens there on their offensive end.
JB, a lot of confidence by both teams, I know, coming into this game, but a lot of losses, big losses, but like he's saying, a lot of returning starters. This is going to be an interesting, let's say, season setter when you come down to it right off the bat here on Friday night. Some good Thursday night games, but this game I've had circled for a long time on the Friday night game before we head out to Brockport on Saturday afternoon. So a lot of good football. This is a big one, I think.
Yeah, no, I think as this is for the New England area, D3 football wise, this is the main event, and it has been for the last few seasons. And our friend Matt Noonan has Springfield ranked in the top of his noontime sports poll. Springfield is just around the 26th position, you could say, on the D3Football.com top 25 with the votes. So a lot of high expectations. 2 defending conference champions, 2 teams that have been going to the playoffs multiple years. So it's very exciting. I know that the Pride Brotherhood has gotten even stronger, Hunter, because apparently some kid named Stone who came up to join you, a little brother playing linebacker. So have you plowed him over in preseason camp just yet to say show him what's up with the rookie, or has he laid you out?
Surprise! No, we haven't gone up. We haven't gone up, head up yet. But I mean, he's been battling some injuries since like the first week of camp, so he's been out for a little bit. So he's figuring out how
to show him the ropes as far as this whole Springfield Western New England rivalry. It should be a great game on Thursday night.
He was there. I mean, he's been at the last 2 games, so he knows what it's like. So.
Hunter, we keep these interviews a little shorter in the preseason because we have so much to get through, but one thing that does not change here in season 11 or otherwise is the opportunity for shout-outs to friends, family, teammates, fans, whomever you like. The stage is yours. Hunter Belzo, shout-outs.
I like to definitely give a shout-out to my mom, my dad, my grandfather. Definitely have to give a shout-out to Chad Shade because I'm going to need him to give me the ball on Friday night. But
get him the damn ball, Chad.
Yeah, I've been telling him since last season, since the offseason. Get it out there.
Right, the only thing I feel bad about, Hunter, is that the chances, if you're probably, it's going to be tough to keep that 9 or 10 yards per carry average up when they keep feeding you the ball. The average might go down, but I think your touchdowns and everything else are going to go up. So anyone who's in the Western Massachusetts, Hartford area, get up to Springfield. They're hosting them 7:00 Friday night at Stagg Field. Should be a great game environment, as Hunter said. Probably about 5,000 fans showing up. Kicking off week 1 of the college football season. Can't get any better than that.
Well,
first off, I would like to thank you guys for all the coverage you do on Springfield College, along with the other D3 schools in the East Coast. Appreciate that.
No problem at all. We appreciate everything Springfield does for us. Brian and company are just tremendous friends and kind of family for us. After last year, I got to take them around Salem, Virginia a little bit when they dropped in for Jordan's Gallardi Trophy finalist moment there, and a lot of you guys did show up, so that was great. Great family there in Springfield, and I'm sure it's not going to change this season. We look to have you back on if you put up some big numbers here along the way for a longer interview. How's that sound?
Absolutely. Sounds good to me.
That was junior. Now, let me underscore this. Junior running back, Hunter Belzo. Hunter, apologies.
Rising junior, former sophomore.
Yeah. We aren't holding your junior status until school officially begins a union or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, you are a junior. Our graphic couldn't be updated in time, and so we apologize for that. And Springfield.
First of many errors that we will commit this season.
Coach Cerzullo will find me, I'm sure, and punish me for that one, and Brian McGoffin as well. That Western New England game that's coming up is going to be an important one, to say the least, for them. Again, we talked about it when we were talking about Wesley Del Val. 2 conference leaders going at it right in week 1 with a lot of losses to have to kind of look at to see if they are filling the voids correctly or well. And we'll see how it works out for those teams. Western New England may or may not be appearing later. We'll see here. I will not flip the script quite yet on this, but WPI seems to be the biggest threat in the new MAC to Springfield. Had a great end of season. They kind of crept up on everybody at the end of the season with how quietly they formed their record. What are your thoughts quickly on WPI?
Well, yeah, I mean, the biggest question for Coach C-Rob and the engineers up in Worcester it really boils down to their quarterback situation, because they don't really have anybody on the roster with varsity experience. They have a lot of talent, both on offense and defense. They're bringing back 9 defensive players, 6 on offense. So really the question mark is, early on, will the star runner Sean McAllen, who is almost had 1,400 rushing yards and 15 touchdowns last season, is he going to have to kind of carry the load, or will this new quarterback be able to get plugged in and get the engineers humming right away? So they won the inaugural New England Bowl last year against a good SUNY Maritime team, and they're going to look to try to improve upon. I mean, let's face it, I mean, Springfield really rolled over everybody in the NEWMAC last year. I think the closest game was a 21 or 22 point loss that the Merchant Marine had to them. So we're going to try and see if there's a closing of the gap between the Pride and the rest of the conference, and if so, we're in for an interesting conference race. If not, then it's probably just just plug in Springfield for the Pool B bid.
Yeah, in Worcester on the 22nd of September is that game. So right off the bat for NEWMAC play, they travel to RPI on September 8th for the Transit Trophy. That's going to be a good learning experience right there. Anna Maria is the week before that. You would think a team that I believe last season went 9-2, WPI did, should be able to handle Anna Maria. And Becker is after RPI. So they got an interesting start where what I would call at teams and then strong teams kind of back and forth on the early part of their schedule. So we'll know a lot about WPI by the end of week 4, I would say, after the RPI and Springfield games for sure. Let's keep rolling. And let's go to number 9 and fill in the rest of this poll, the table that we have here. But there are a couple other teams we'll talk about as well. Framingham State from the MASCAC. This is a team that I thought would appear in here. I wasn't sure, though, until I actually counted the votes, and it did appear in number 9. So Framingham State is getting respect. A team that was a little helter-skelter toward the end of the season last year. You can't put your finger on what kind of team or what kind of conference the MASCAC is very easily right now. You have Western Connecticut State that's always looking to pose a threat with their track meet football games that they seem to breed scoreboard-wise and whatnot. Plymouth State is always seeming to loom large. But it looks like, Noonan, you, me, Pat, have all sort of zeroed in that Framingham State could be a strong team again. What do you think's causing it?
Well, I think they have done a lot of kind of what some of the stuff that Mike Drass used to do back in the day. I mean, they schedule up, and they have been proactively reaching out to teams from New York and Pennsylvania to play them, and they're going to travel to Cortland. In, I believe, week 3 of the season week 2, which is a great test. They've played them on a number of occasions now, I think in the last couple seasons. So, I mean, kind of those opportunities, the recruiting, they've got, I think it's Karan Wright, the running back who we had on the show last year, is a very strong runner. They've always has a good complement of offensive and defensive line. So, they're right up there as far as the top team in New England goes, along with Springfield as far as overall talent. Just a matter of, are they going to get tripped up like they did against Plymouth State or some other team catches them? There's been a lot of buzz around actually Worcester State, Frank, and it's kind of a shame in a way that the Lancers WPI rivalry seems to have been put on hold, probably just because of scheduling. But that was always a good one, usually on the second or third weekend of the season. But the MASCAC, I do feel, is kind of Framingham State's to lose. It'll just depend on whether a WestCon or a Worcester or somebody kind of catches them off guard and creates that kind of wacky tiebreaker situation that we saw Plymouth State take advantage of last year.
Yeah, that was an amazing little run of affairs at the end there. And remember our D3 Blitzer moments at the end of that Framingham State game last year. It went down to the wire, literally. I'm looking at Worcester State. I'm not sure why it comes off because Salve, Regina, and Becker are the first 2 opponents. You would think that Anna Maria game could have been the WPI game just as easily. So I'm not sure what's causing that exactly. Endicott is the first game for Framingham State on 9/1 Saturday at noon. That'll be an interesting one to watch. McGonigal's first game as head coach for Endicott, and is Framingham State going to pick up where they kind of left off-ish last year? We'll see. And that is, in a nutshell, the MASCAC. Let's round things out here real quick. And first, we're going to talk about the CCC entrant. I'm going to actually go big box on this so you can see it a little bit better. And that is Western New England. So, interesting thing here. A conference that you would think would have some strength is really almost 15 deep here, 16 deep on our list. Anthony Service graduating off and Coach Emery leaving as late as he did might be some of the reasons here for this drop-off in the CCC. Salve Regina obviously is a team that isn't on this list but has done decent over the last few years. Mm-hmm. I almost feel like this is a slight to the CCC, the way this fell out, and to Western New England even, because they return a lot of talented players, but Service is a special kind of player.
Well, let's put it in context, Frank. So the champions of the CCC and the MASCAC lost by a combined, I think, 102-0 in the first round of the NCAA playoffs. So that's kind of when people are like, why are people so down on New England football? Sometimes they're stuck in a part of the country where there's a ton of colleges, there's a ton of both athletic and academic recruiting, so it's tough for them to kind of build themselves up to the same level. I think Framingham is on their way to doing that. But for Western New England to kind of elevate to that next level, and to give them credit, they've made they're getting into the playoffs, and those playoff experiences are invaluable for their program. But after losing a talent like a Service, a quarterback, I mean, they have a couple of guys fighting it out that each bring certain things to the table, but they're going to have to kind of prove it a little bit, I think, in the eyes of voters, kind of going into this season. It's sort of like Hobart, what kind of team we have here. So like you said, the point differential once we get down here is very, very slim. All it would take is one or two to jump from the receiving votes into the top 12, 11, or 10 spots. So it's not like there's a huge gap between them and the rest of the field. It's just there's a question mark, kind of like, well, what are these guys going to look like? And we'll find out on Friday night when they play against Springfield.
Yeah, what you bring up is similar to what the GNAC in basketball on the men's side has experienced with Albertus Magnus, a team that seems to run the table on teams in its conference and is always on the bubble, even despite the fact they'll only have 3 or 4 losses in some years for, if they were to lose their conference championship because of the respect level on a national level that goes on in that situation. And so that's kind of what we're seeing, I think, in this mentality, as you brought up, that New England football generally, Western New England more specifically here in the CCC, is having that level of problem getting themselves and their conference on the map the way they need to. Finally, and this is you lose a big player, does your profile drop question, and there's Husson, the ECFC. Yeah. I look at the ECFC as a whole, and I understand a little bit of what's going on here. They don't even have a Salve Regina type really in that conference. Husson should run their table if they have any semblance of who they had on the field last year, even without John Smith out there. Yeah. But they start with Union on Saturday in Schenectady. We talked to Jack Reilly about that at the top of the show. It's in Schenectady. I'm penciling Union in for a win there, to be honest with you, but it doesn't necessarily affect my view of Husson at that point. Husson's going to be the leader of their conference, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big question, they only bring back 5 on offense, and that was a big reason for their run last year. They do have 7 defenders coming back, a couple of specialists. So I think what's going to happen with Husson is they're going to have to evolve from more of a passing team, whereas they were more of a rushing team, given the strength of John Smith. So I think once again, it's we'll know kind of what's going on with these guys after the first couple of weeks. If they beat Union and then they beat Western New England in week 3. Then you're like, okay, this is a team that we need to take a lot more seriously.
JB, one more time. Here it is, our preseason top 12 in its entirety. And one thing that is missing, we wanted to mock more or less the East regional rankings. And so there is no NESCAC representation on this list in case people think that we're slighting the NESCAC. We are not. We'll talk more about them as their season takes off and continues in September. So back to you and me, kid. Let's talk about some games to watch in week 1, and we'll run them on the screen as we begin to talk about them. We've highlighted some of the ranked versus ranked or would-be ranked type scenarios. It's kind of funny at Springfield, West New England. It, to me, feels like a ranked game, but it's not in reality.
It probably should be. Yeah.
At least in our rankings with the points, it would be. But Del Val, Wesley, number 17 versus number 9, 7 o'clock on Friday. We kick off, though, with Frostburg at Stevenson. Number 8, Frostburg at Stevenson, 7 o'clock on Thursday. Now, there's a statement possibility game for Stevenson if they really want to come out in that beautiful stadium they have down in Owings Mills, and set the statement right off the bat this season. But I have a feeling Frostburg Fitz, as they call him, is going to be to the task as coach with his team, and Connor Cox is his quarterback.
Yeah, well, I think the Mustangs were they had a disappointing 2017 season. They didn't win as many games as they probably would have liked, and they are still ranked second in the MAC coaches poll, so there is some expectation that they're going to be right there in the mix with the Del Vals and the Wideners of the conference. So maybe don't sell them short, even though they're not they're sort of the underdog, the non-ranked team in this matchup. They're the home team, and they're a pretty strong program. So it's going to be tough for the Bobcats to just they can't just go in there and expect to blow them out. And we'll see how it goes on Thursday.
I'm writing down a list right now, too, here. One that wouldn't jump off the page to most people, but it does for us. University of New England at Coast Guard. It's a debut of the program of University of New England. So welcome aboard, and welcome to In the Huddle, University of New England. And I also see Rowan at Widener. These games are both on Thursday, and both starting at 7 o'clock. Rowan and Widener starts at 7:37 p.m., just in case you need to set your watch accordingly.
It's a television broadcast down there in Pennsylvania, but yeah.
That's incredible. But that's a game that obviously is going to set some tone in the NJAC and the MAC matchups that we always watch for. Obviously, Western New England, Springfield. What else jumps off the page for you generally in week 1?
I think the Albright-Salisbury game is pretty interesting. The Lions are they're not bringing back as strong a team as they may have had last year, but they still have a lot of talent and could potentially upset Salisbury in that one. And then from a New England perspective, even though I think it should be a pretty straightforward, who's the favorite, WPI and Anna Maria with Coach Dan Mulroney, who was a former assistant coach of Coach Rob at WPI. There's always some of those kind of coaching ties that bind D3 football together. And I do like the shout out for the Nor'easters from Maine, and but keep an eye on Coast Guard, Frank. When I talked to Coach George, he was really positive about this team, particularly a sophomore class that got to do for the first time in a while. This it's kind of like a Marine type of training, and so those guys went through a lot in the off season, and they'll probably be in real good shape. So keep an eye out for the Coast Guard this year. They may surprise some folks. And, of course, Utica at St. Lawrence should be a good litmus test for both the kind of the middle to upper echelon of the Liberty League and the Empire 8. It's always good to see how those games pan out. And otherwise, Frank, I think those are the ones that I have on my radar.
I think we should talk about the marquee one more time and put up the slide one more time as well. Hobart at Brockport. It's kicking off at 1 o'clock on Saturday. Yeah, we'll be there. Weather permitting, you landing okay on Friday in the upstate New York area. But you and I will be doing a pregame show at 12 o'clock Eastern Time, in-game updates on Facebook Live, and then a post-game show with interviews with the winning and possibly losing team as well. So you'll want to join us. Please come and give us a little support. In the background, show us what a Brockport and Hobart fan base looks like before this game begins. Give us a little enthusiasm in the background. We'll make sure the camera is within sight of you if you come and find us in the field level zone that we'll be in. And we want to thank Stacy Corey and company at Brockport for helping us out, Eric Hart, the AD, and Steve Potter, who's been kind of the helmsman coach-wise to get us out there. This was his idea, his brainchild back in the off-season, and we said, you know what? maybe we'll try this.
Good show.
So, any
All right.
final thoughts, JB, before we close out our preseason show?
No, just it should be an exciting season. I think a lot of the usual suspects are predicted to return back to the playoffs, but you never know. This is why we play the games, and we'll be back early next week with our week 1 recap, and obviously the Saturday. Hopefully everyone can tune in and see our attempt at game day in Brockport, and it should be a fun season.
Val pretty well when you weren't there. Now I will blame you if it doesn't go
right.
well this time. Okay.
So if it doesn't work, it's my fault. I got it.
Folks, thanks for joining us here. It is season 11. Stick with us all season long. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Facebook. You know where to find us. It's In the Huddle.